Hey guys, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. We are launching something a little bit different today. This is an experimental craft that's basically designed to test a new propulsion system that I want to experiment with. Hopefully get a little more efficiency out of our engine and that sort of stuff. The launch stage here is completely conventional. It's just some solid rocket boosters and a liquid fuel engine. But we're launching one of the thermal rockets, the nuclear powered rocket. Gonna try out a reactor, see what it actually is capable of in terms of what sort of return on our fuel we get. It does weigh a lot more than a conventional ship, but if we can offset that with fuel, then it'll probably be worthwhile. So we're just getting up into orbit here, and we'll actually be revealing the ship here momentarily. Now this is part of the Interstellar mod pack. I had to add like a little mini booster here still because the thrust to weight ratio is fairly terrible with these thermal engines, but we're high enough up now that we can probably, I think I just broke that off, so we're not high enough up. Apparently we have to be pretty darn high up in order to actually deploy these. I think you have to be basically entirely outside the atmosphere before the little radiators can be deployed without breaking things. Oh well. Well, we'll just... hopefully that thing will get unstuck at some point. I'm sure it will when we flip over here. But, we don't need the two. We just had them for symmetry. So, whatever. And we're probably cruising about. I'm waiting basically till we're out of the atmosphere. And there's way more than we probably need on this ship anyway. Live and learn. Live and learn. So, we're still on conventional rocket engines here until we actually separate the stage. So the idea here is that if we use this stuff, it's going to be used on ships that are exclusively in space, so it's not really that important how well it actually gets out of the atmosphere, because these ships are going to be used for just shuttling back and forth between the Mun and Kerbin and stuff. So we're just finishing up our burn here now, and we'll go ahead, and I believe the reactor is already on. Everything should be good with that. I'm not entirely sure. Like I said, this is an experimental, and I really don't want that fuel stuff staying on screen. I hate it when I accidentally click on stuff and the fuel sticky things come up. Kind of wish the menus weren't as transparent for clicking as they are, but whatever. So, we've established orbit. Let's go ahead and take a quick look here. Everything except for that one panel looks like it's good to go. So we can go ahead and decouple. If I can remember where we need to decouple from. There we go. And I believe the engines are all active and stuff now. So what we're going to do is plot a course for the Mun. We're going to make a trip out to the Mun and back just as a trial run here. Now in the future, these will not be returning into the atmosphere. I didn't really think that through. It's probably not good to have a reactor come like flying in from space and crash into somebody's house or something, but this one is not designed to land in one piece. Only the capsule is supposed to come back, so we'll have to figure that out. But I'm gonna go ahead and get our course plotted to the Mun, and we'll start our burn in a moment. Alright, so we're burning out to the Mun. As you can see, our thrust to weight ratio is still fairly terrible. It's really nothing to write home about, but it's doing all right, and we don't have an enormous amount of fuel on this thing, but we seem to have plenty of delta V actually to do this trip. I'm a little bit disappointed with the delta V totals here. Like, we only have about 1600. It's kind of seeming like it's not really worth all the trouble of having these reactors and stuff at this point. I know that there's better reactors that we're going to unlock in the tech tree and all that, but this thing, I mean, it's kind of cool that it generates all your electrical power too, if you put an electrical generator on it, but all in all, this doesn't seem really all that great. It's nice that it's flexible with what kind of fuel you can use, I suppose. I believe I only put liquid fuel in this rocket. There's no oxidizer, because these don't use... I mean, you can use oxidizer, but they don't need oxidizer and fuel at the same time. So we'll just go ahead and keep on burning here. So the burn's wrapping up now. That is a lengthy process with this. It's definitely not fast. So far, I don't know how I feel about this thing, but it did get the job done, so that's something. It might be good for probes, is kind of what I'm thinking. Like a long-range probe as an alternative to an ion engine or something. It's not going to give us the efficiency of an ion engine, but it gives more thrust, so I'm kind of thinking that might be what we use these things for. But let's go ahead and get swung on out to the moon, establish our orbit, and pretty much just orbit and come back. Alright, well, we have arrived in the moon's sphere of influence. I don't really need to be combining the word mun and sphere. But we have arrived in the sphere of influence. Get a good look at it. Now we're plotting our circularization burn here. Go ahead and just time warp until we actually do the burn. And I probably could have used an unmanned craft for this, but for some reason I didn't want to. I don't really know why. It probably would have made more sense to use an unmanned craft to do this sort of mission, but what are you gonna do? I guess it's better to have a heavier payload on the front, like, you know, the cabin with the life support and whatnot on board. So it doesn't look like we're gonna have any trouble at all getting this burn completed, which is cool. It actually seems like it's doing a little bit better out here for some reason. It's probably just because there's smaller burns and stuff. It seems like a reasonable amount of time it's actually going to get this burn done in, which is pretty sweet. So let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Alright, so we've established our stable orbit around the Mun. Everything worked really well. I'm happy with the performance of this ship, actually. I'm not sure what applications I'm really going to use this engine for, but it does seem like it's viable. Like I said, probes would probably be a good thing. It's cool that with this electrical generator that it generates electricity for the probes, so that would actually solve problems when I send stuff out to Joule and stuff where there's not a lot of sunlight. So that's probably something that it's useful for, is when we go further out into the solar system. So I'm just plotting a return course home right now. There's really no point in staying at the Mun. Like, this guy doesn't have the ability to land with this thing or anything, so we've still got more than enough delta V to get returned, but it's not by a long shot. But if you look at how much fuel is actually on board, it's not bad. This is a pretty small spacecraft. It's only got one of those short, like, sections of fuel tank. It's got one of the short, not the really short ones, but the medium-sized short ones. So, I don't know. All in all, that seems like it's decent. And, like I said, out in Joule and stuff, probes with this would probably do really well. Alright, so we completed our course correction. I just wanted to take a quick EVA here and go examine the reactor. I think we actually have to get out to shut it down anyway, so we're done burning. We might as well shut down the reactor, I guess, or at least take a look at it. I just like doing spacewalks, partly too, but I didn't really get a chance to look at this thing up close after we took off. So basically the electrical generator takes heat from this reactor. It makes like a kilowatt of power, I believe, and then yeah, I just initiated the manual shutdown there. So basically the reactor just generates heat, and the engine converts that heat into thrust, and that generator converts the heat into electricity. So it's pretty much how it works. We can come back up here. It doesn't look like any. I think there's a cooldown period before you can reactivate the reactor of like 9 hours or 8 hours or something like that. It's sort of realistic, I suppose. There's residual heat that actually is still in that until it does its thing. So you can see how small this craft is. So it does provide a pretty decent ISP. Like, we only had that fuel tank was all the fuel we had that got us from orbit of Kerbin to the Mun and back, and there's still some fuel left in that tank. So it's gonna have its uses, and the bigger engines and reactors will probably be even more useful in the future. But we have an alarm coming up here in a minute out at Eve, so I'm gonna go ahead and put him away, and we're gonna head out to Eve while he's on his way back down to Kerbin. Alright, so here we are out at Eve again. This thing is on a ridiculously long orbit right now. And it's kind of annoying because it takes forever for it to get back down to low Eve orbit. So what we need to do is figure out what sort of adjustments need to be made to the orbit here. So I'm going to fiddle around with some maneuver nodes here, and we'll talk about what we're doing. So basically what we're going to try to do with this thing is get it out to Gilly. And we want to do that, of course, as close to Eve as possible. We really have to make the plane change in a couple of places, and this is going to be the easiest probably. So we're going to try to adjust our plane to match Eve's and then work out exactly what we need to do to get out to Eve. It's a pretty stout burn that we have here. Still got an awful lot of delta V left. In this stage even there's quite a bit left, so it shouldn't be a problem to get this maneuver done. Both of these probes are destined for Eve orbit, so we don't really need to worry about having any way to return to Eve. Gilly orbit, I meant. Alright, so we got our plane change done. I'm working on getting a close encounter with Gilly here, and it looks like we have basically a collision almost with Gilly, so that ought to work. Go ahead and get this set up here. It looks like the burn is in like 30 minutes or something like that, so go ahead and set this up. Alright, so we're out here still. We're coming up on our burn. Get a lovely view of Eve and the sun. It's looking nice. So we'll just go ahead and time warp up until our burn here. And let MechJeb handle the burn. MechJeb is very useful for these sort of things. Saves a lot of time and trouble. Very much appreciate it. Oh, there's an eclipse. Eve looks a little menacing right now, actually. Eve is kind of menacing, actually, in all reality. So, looks like the burn time is coming up here in a second. Just waiting on the computer to do it. There it goes. So, we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up. Alright, so we're finalizing our burn here, and our approach is pretty much set for Gilly. So we'll be able to drop these probes off out there, and basically the main spacecraft is just going to stay in orbit for a while and act as a relay satellite until at some point we get proper relay satellites out here, and I can probably deorbit it then. But for now we still need it. And there we go. Looking good. So at this point I think we're pretty much done out here at Eve until this encounter happens, which is going to take a little while because that's pretty far out. Start moving pretty slow way out where Gilly is. So I think we'll switch back to Kerbin, deal with returning our brave Kerbonaut from his experimental voyage, get him home. Alright, so we're screaming in into low orbit here. Gonna be entering the atmosphere very soon. Frame rate issues for whatever reason as time warp happens and stuff loads. So at this point there's really not much to do. He's just gonna do a little bit of a retro burn to slow down. I mean, I might as well, I guess. I have fuel and stuff. There's really no reason. I think I must have reactivated the reactor because I don't know how the reactor would work otherwise, but I'm pretty sure I do a retro burn here. So I guess I reactivated the reactor. Good luck to whoever is down below. And there goes our thermal doohickeys already. They break off at, it seems like, about 50k. That's kind of irritating. Those things are very, very fragile. I'll have to keep that in mind for other missions where we do aero braking and stuff. It doesn't matter now for this ship at all, but that's really, really irritating. Very fragile. Alright, there goes the retro burn. I probably have waste heat that I'm blowing off. I don't know. But basically the thinking here was just we might as well slow down and take some of the stress off of the space frame. And, you know, the fuel's just going to be landing on the surface anyway. There's no sense in bringing any fuel down. I'm not trying to make a precision landing here or anything yet. This is still in 0.23.5, so it doesn't really matter how far away from the space center I am or anything like that. Alright, so we separate, watch the deadly reactor go off on its merry way. Hopefully it'll burn up, but I'm sure it won't. Even if it did, it would rain deadly radiation down on everybody. I'm sure it would probably be a bad thing still. Something broke. Solar panels or something? I don't know. Alright, so I actually made it through the atmosphere once with this, as I intended to. I actually wanted to do a more gentle braking, as I have kind of started to do, is go around once or twice in a planet before landing, just to take the strain off of the deadly reentry and stuff. But that pretty much wraps things up for this episode. We still have some work to do on the space station. I want to get some permanent spacecraft going that are going to be shuttles back and forth between the Mun and Kerbin, so we'll probably start working on that. I'd like to get through all this stuff so that we can get updated to 0.24. Probably by the time we do that, 0.25 will be out. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.